Hi everyone, this is Tanya with Flying Dog Studio. Thank you so much for joining me as I do another experiment in my experiment journal. And for this, we're going to be using the Caran Neocolor IIs. We'll look at the colors here. That is turquoise blue, sky blue. We have ochre. I apologize. These are a little bit blurry. That's why I'm reading them off to you. Golden yellow, some brown. And I swear it sounds like I named this color. It's called orangish yellow. That sounds like my description of it. A light olive, some grass green, and then finally umber, one of my favorite colors that I use. I have a couple of brushes here. I'll bring out one later. This is from the Roll and Langnickel size 8 round from their Zen series, and then Winsor Newton, that's a size 6 round from the Cotman series. I always have water handy. Then we're also going to be using, and this is where the experiment comes in, Winsor Newton watercolor pencils. I'll link all of this down below so you can see where I purchased these. There may be affiliate links, there may be links I've put down there. Choose whichever link you want to use. I always try to put in the ones that are going to get you the best deal. That being said, let's take a look at what we're doing on the screen. This is a landscape piece, a very loose landscape piece, sort of like an impressionist piece. And at this point, what I'm trying to do is just block in shapes. You can see that I've put in the original light green lines in there with that light olive, kind of getting my horizon line in there and where some of the hills are going to be. And if you want to take a look at this reference photo, I'm going to link it down below. I got it from Unsplash, and if you haven't tried Unsplash, take a look. They have a website, they have an app. I go there all the time to take a look at reference photos. And as long as you give the artist credit who took the photo, then you are free to use them in your work. So I am only doing a portion of the picture. I've changed it so that I could make it artistically mine. I wanted to leave a few elements out, and I didn't add any in. I just wanted to leave a few out. So I'm starting with the Caran and I'm getting a good feel for all of the shapes and all of the colors that are in there. These are just going to be my base colors. I'm going to block them in, let it dry, put some more colors on top. And this is where the experiment is coming in. Now, I didn't name all the colors again on these because I didn't know at the time what I was going to be using, but I'll have those up on the screen. And you can see I'm starting with plum. And I'm not being very careful with how I'm coloring. It's kind of haphazard back and forth, but that's okay. When I activate it with water, it's all going to work out in the end. If you didn't catch the last piece that I did in this book, that was sort of along the same lines, except I used a little bit different colors on it, and it was a scene that I made up in my own mind. I felt like the sky could have used a bit more color. So when I found this photograph, I was like, this is the one I want to use. And so I'm making certain that all of the colors are super dark, super bright, and they kind of balance with the ground down below. Now, I want to see, my experiment on this is how well do the Caran and the Winsor & Newton watercolors work together. Will they blend well together? Will one overpower the other? I didn't know how they would work out. I mean, they're both water soluble, so it tells me that they will. And look at this. They blend very well together. I did find that if I colored just a really thick area with the Neocolor IIs, when I come back with the watercolor pencils and I want to color on top, I actually have to make sure my pencil is wet before I color, and we'll see that in just a few minutes. But as far as them mixing together, when you lay them down dry at the very beginning, you can see they mix together and complement each other very well. So I was pleased with that. Now you might wonder, do I have a piece coming up that I'm going to use these in, something in mind? Not really. I just kind of wanted to know if I wanted to do some detail on a Caran piece, could I use the watercolor pencils to do that? Because one of you mentioned, and I totally agree, on the last piece that I did of some rocks, that I used only the watercolor pencils that, you said, I don't necessarily use mine. I don't really like them because they seem to take up a lot of time. and they do. It took me a long time to do that piece. So I was thinking, if I could lay down, and you mentioned also about Caran d'Ache, and I love my Caran d'Ache. So if I lay down the Caran d'Ache first, could I come back with those on top? And yes, I think it is a possibility. And again, we'll talk about that when we get a little bit farther along on here. So I'm going to be quiet for just a few minutes and let you watch me work. And I'm going to hop back on when I want to talk about another detail here. With all of the colors activated on here now, I'm going to let this dry. Now, some time has passed and I'm coming back with the pencils. And I want to get a little bit more detail. Again, this is not going to be a detailed piece. This is just a little more detail up front so there's some grass in here. So this is where I'm bringing in those watercolor pencils from Winsor Newton. And if you take a look at these watercolor pencils, I'll probably link my set down below because this came in a collection and it had like a skyscape and a landscape and a portrait. It had like 4 or 5 different collections in one box. And they're fabulous. I love them, but it's pointless to me to have them in those collections because they repeat the pencils. And honestly, for about 20 more bucks, I could have purchased the set that had 64 pencils in it and gotten more pencils for my bucks. So think about that if you decide you want to try these out. I would just go ahead and buy the bigger set. So I'll try to link both of those down below if I can find links for both. If not, I'll just link the one where I purchased, or I'll link where you can find them. I can't remember if I got these from Dick Blick or Michael's, but anyway, I got it from one of the places. Okay, you can see, this is what I was talking about earlier. I'm coming back with the pencil, and that green area, I had put down some green and some dark umber, and it was pretty thick back there. Same color. I'm using the same pencil, and notice on the right-hand side, it's a little bit lighter. I used some of the same colors, but it wasn't as heavy of an application as I did over on the left-hand side. And so I couldn't bear down hard enough to get what I wanted over on the left-hand side. I'm mixing some colors in here. This is a little bit out of what the picture looks like. I put some turquoise in there from my pencils. I wanted to add a little bit of interest and just see what that would do underneath everything. So this is where I'm going to be doing some excessive layering, and you're going to see me going back and forth between the Neocolor IIs and the watercolor pencils, but I'm just building up the color. I'm wanting to know, number one, how much can the paper take? And it can take a huge amount. I'll link that paper down below too. My favorite paper. I've tried a bunch of watercolor papers. This is 100% cotton. It is my favorite paper out there. So I wanted to know how much the paper could take, and I wanted to know how far I could go with layering before I could no longer layer. So enjoy watching me do some excessive layering on here while listening to another musical interlude. I want to talk about my brush choices on here. Right now you see I'm using that blue-handled Winsor Newton. It does not hold as much water as that Royal and Langnickel that's setting over to the right-hand side of the screen. I like to use that Royal and Langnickel when I have a large area that needs water, that needs activation. That covers a large area quickly, holds a lot of water. Okay, 2 more colors for you, white and light gray. I always forget to pull those out. So if you've watched my other videos, I think there's one that I did not forget to pull those out, but I always forget to pull those out. I don't know why. I wanted to tone down. I know I said I wanted the sky a little bit brighter, but I felt like the purple, I took a look at the reference photo and I felt like I wanted to tone it down just a little bit, kind of use that white to blend in some of the edges and put a little more blue in the sky. And then you're going to see me using that light gray. That light gray is wonderful for blending. If you need to kind of mute some colors or work some colors together, I have found that that light gray is just a nice little cool gray, and it does a great job at blending all of those together. And now that we have all of that down in the sky, and you can see I've been really building up all of those colors, what I've done is I've created a barrier to the paper. So now that I'm adding the water on top, it's actually created more of a gouache situation. It moves a little bit differently on the paper, and it felt a little more opaque, and it felt a little more like gouache. I really can't explain it other than to say that. I do like doing it this way. So yes, I'll tell you, spoiler alert, I will be using this in the future, these two together, because I did like the way they built up on the paper. And I do like the fact that neither of them look like watercolor in the end. I'm really not sure what they look like. Maybe a combination of pastel. I don't know. Let me know what you think. When you get to the very end, and you can sort of get a hint right now of what it's going to look like. But when it gets to the end, let me know. Do you think it looks like watercolor? Do you think it looks like pastel? I don't think it looks anything like watercolor when we get to the end. I don't see watercolor elements in it, but let me know what you think down in the comments below. You can see I've gotten to the point that I cannot put the butter yellow on there. That's like my lightest yellow that I'm going to use. It's working well over here. I don't have the color quite as built up, so I'm trying it out with the brush, and it did activate. That was still wet when I started to use that brighter yellow. So from this point on, you're going to see the pencil disappear off the paper. What you can't see is that I'm dipping it straight into my water, and it activates it that quickly on the pencil tip. But you do have to keep going back over, and you'll see how many times I have to go to the water. And I'm doing this with all of my pencils. I'm just going ahead and I'm just dipping it in the water so that I can color on top. Things are too thick for me to color on top of those anymore for there to be a good application of color. So by coming in with the wet pencil, I can get the color where I want it. However, you do have to be careful, because you can build that color up too quickly and get kind of a caked on area. And that's what happened to me right down in the area where I was just working, in that lower left-hand corner. At this point in time of the day that I was working, there was a storm coming in, and it was getting almost too dark for me to work in front of my window. I like to work with natural light. So I was trying to hurry and just get some color down. And you'll see in just a few minutes, I put some green down here. I believe it's the olive green I pick up, and I'm kind of mixing them all in, and my pencil gets a little too wet, and it applies, here comes the green, it applies a little more color than what I would like. But I have to just let it go for the day and let it dry, and then I have to come back the next day and work it in. And you're going to see that coming up in just a minute. Okay, it is a brand new day, and I'm working with some more greens, I realized that I'm going to have to do something about that lower left-hand corner. I had used some other colors in there that were dry, some pencils, and tried to go back over it and kind of break up some of that area, and you can't see it on screen. I'm disappointed you can't tell on screen, but it does have a few caked up areas. It's pretty thick over there, so I'm gonna have to do something about that. I kind of want to blend it out just a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit. And I'm coming back over and working on it some. I kind of want to tie it in, so that's what you're gonna see here. And I end up having to get a brush out and do a little brush work on it. And that's what's going to break that up and blend it all together for me. But from this point on, what you're going to see is me getting the detail with the Winsor Newton pencils. I will pick up the Caran here and there when I want to add some more color, especially at the very end. You'll see me pick up a Caran that I will not be activating. So I want to say that right now so I don't forget at the end. But the very last color I pick up, I believe, is one of the yellows from the Caran Neocolor IIs, and on the hills in the background and some of the areas in the front, I just get some highlights, some subtle highlights, and I do not activate those. I just let it be the raw color right on top. So watch a little bit more of this, and we'll talk again in a second. Okay guys, we're almost to the very end. Again, let me know what you think. Does it look like watercolor? Does it look like pastel? Does it look like a mess? Let me know down below in the comments. I can take it, but be nice, because some people have not been nice, and I will call you out for not being nice. Please be kind. We're here to learn and work together. But if you made it to the end, kudos to you. Thank you so much for being here. If you're new, I hope you will subscribe. If you have been on to see what I'm doing for a long time, thank you for being here. I'm always happy when you guys show up. I'm going to be doing some more of these, and I'll probably be doing these guys together in some sort of project in the future, but definitely be working some more in my experiment journal. Thank you again for being here. I hope that you'll join me for all the things I have coming up here soon. But until then, my friends, I'll see you in the next one.